For more than a decade, we've talked about the issues, even in Texas. Texas, the number one energy producer state in the nation. Texas, a state that produces more energy than most countries. And yet, as you've noticed in the headlines, we are in a power crisis here. And for more than a decade, the leader on this subject to try and fight the crisis, to try and build resiliency into the Texas power grid, is my good friend, Senator Bob Hall. In fact, he ran for the state Senate partly on the idea of providing resiliency to our power grid. And so I'd like to welcome you, Bob, to the Economic War Room.
Well, thank you, Kevin. It's good to see you. Good to be back with you. And thank you so much for what you're doing for our state and our country with these podcasts like this. I thank you so much.
Well, it's a pleasure to work with great patriots like you. And Senator Hall, you've been at this. I've testified in your hearings, that you've held hearings in the state Senate. I've testified. Frank Gaffney's gone with me and testified. You've had General Stephen Quast and others that you've worked with. You've been working on resiliency for Texas and warning about how our power grid was not resilient. Tell us what has happened that's caused so many people to be cut off from power and in the cold.
Well, it's a combination of things, and the really interesting thing is Tucker Carlson got it right the other night, and he said that people freezing in Texas due to a lack of energy is like someone starving to death in a grocery store. Here we are, the leading leading state in the world in energy production, and we are in the cold, literally in the cold here. But it is a combination of things that have happened, not so much of the power company's fault, but government agencies and government rules, regulation, and legislation that is compounded over the years. Now accentuated by the insane policy we have of green energy, actually tapping it off. Texas finds itself in a position where we've had a number of our coal-fired plants have shut down in the last years because of the environmental problems. We have those that we have left are limited in the output that they can give for environmental reasons. Huge fines if they go over that and dare to emit a couple of extra particles in the air. Old equipment, it's aging. Haven't had anything built in several years. We've been operating at a almost close to zero margins on high demand for the last couple of years because of the dwindling capacity out there, the aging equipment, the limitations on it, and then it all comes together when the temperature takes a nosedive and the demand goes up like it did last August, but we have less capacity, and then equipment fails.
Yeah, and you didn't mention the growing population, which I know is another problem. And I want you to talk about the windmills and the roles that they play.
Oh yes, the roles that they play is to consume a lot of taxpayer dollars and subsidies, and they don't provide any base load capacity for the state. They only operate when the wind is blowing, and they're bad as the solar. All night long they produce absolutely nothing out there. So it's consuming a lot of money that could have been put into good, efficient gas burning facilities or cleaning up our coal facilities which we could do to a reasonable level. And so it all contributed to the disaster that we find ourselves in here because we don't have a resilient electrical system.
Well, we've got a taste. This is just a taste in a couple of days of what it's like to be without electrical power. And that is, you've been warning about either a solar storm or a man-made event or a cyber attack, all of these things that could take down our grid for longer than a day or two. And the disaster that would bring to human lives, but also to the economy and to the whole nation.
Oh, absolutely. And you're right. This is just a small taste of what we've been talking about, that electricity is the third most important thing to sustaining life. This is not like it was in the 1800s. Today, just about everything we touch, eat, live in and around requires electricity. You don't get water, you don't get sewer, you don't get heating, you don't get cooling, you don't get communication, you don't get anything without electricity. And we've seen a small smidgen of what it would be like if we were to lose our electrical power to a man-made or a natural event that took it down for a long period of time. We've only intermittently lost this and lost it long-term in some places. I'm talking about if the entire state or country were shut down, you and I and 90% of the people would not live to see the first year end as that would happen. And we just saw a small taste of it. It was something people, I think, were having a hard time understanding what it would be like. They just think, well, we can always flip the switch and the light comes on. Well, no, it doesn't. But this is just a small taste of what would happen if we had a coronal mass ejection like we had in 1859 that would take out our power grid from coast to coast, or one small nuclear weapon detonated 250 nautical miles above the earth, ending our electrical capability beyond what we could repair. A cyber attack, or just the inability of the power company control systems not working right. And that had the very real possibility in the last few days, had the control systems not worked like they did, if the coordination with the telephone company lines and the power company had not been right, we could have crashed the entire Texas electrical grid. And had that happened, it would be weeks or months before it could be turned back on again. And we are in this precarious situation because of government agencies, legislation, rules, and regulations that have hamstrung our power companies and put them in this place. And we have an economic structure that does not encourage new investments for new facilities. And we have got to change all of that, Kevin. We have got to move to what we have in the bill that we've tried multiple times to get passed. And the good news is we've gotten it out of the Senate 3 times now. Dan Patrick has been there for us. He's helped us. We got it out in spite of some opposition from a senator or two who hold great allegiance to the power companies trying to stop it. We did get it out of the Senate, got it over to the House. In this last session, Tony Tinderholt he was the sponsor in the House, but it went through State Affairs that was chaired by none other than our current Speaker of the House, Dave Phelan. And he and I met, we talked about it. He understood the seriousness of it, and he helped get that bill out of his committee. It went to calendars where the backroom deals were cut from some of the leadership to make sure that it never saw the light of day on the floor of the House. And that's where it died. And so
here's your chance. You'll have the Texas people behind you. You'll have the American people behind you, because if Texas can show how to make our grid resilient, that will be instructional for the Eastern grid and the Western grid, and could potentially save this country. So we're behind you, Senator Hall. Keep up that excellent work.
Well, thank you, Kevin. And we are. I mean, we've already, we've got more to address this time than we did before. President Trump did the right thing with his executive orders, bringing the attention at the national level, and particularly when he had the executive order that recognized that we can no longer trust equipment manufactured and built by the Chinese. The Chinese are our number one enemy. The Russians are way, way, way down the list compared to the Chinese, who actually want to take down America. And they're about to do to us in the power system what they tried to do with our fighter aircraft. When Bill Clinton allowed them to access to our technology, we bought avionics from them, from the Chinese, only to find out that it was loaded with malware, which meant the Chinese had control of our fighter aircraft that it went into. And now we know that we have control systems in our electric and other equipment in our electric grid system that was manufactured in China, that has malware in it, that they could turn it off at any time. And we have got to stop that practice. And I'll have a separate bill to address that issue. We have to buy American. We have to be able to trust that the equipment we have out there is going to work when we want it to work, when we need it to work, and have it a part of a resilient system that recognizes that in this world we live in today, man-made or natural, there are threats to the third most important thing to sustaining life, and that's our electrical system. We cannot live without it, and we've seen what is happening to the people here with what we have, and we haven't seen the worst of it yet because we don't know what it's going to be like when the temperature goes up and all those frozen pipes start leaking, which is a result of it. But our bill was broad based. It was we didn't call it resilient communities just as a cute name. It was what it meant to be, because just having our electrical power grid survive is not enough. We've got to have communications. We've got to have emergency services. We have to have financial services. We have to have water. We have to have sewer. All of those things to continue life and as we know it. And so our bill is set up to recognize communities that develop we call it a 5-6-star resilient community, as they have resilience for their power system, for their communications, for their emergency service, for financial services, etc. They get a star, like what we're seeing happening in the community of San Antonio. That out of our previous bill, the people in San Antonio teamed up with the military base down there and with the power company CPS to put together a resilient communities program for the San Antonio area, recognizing what this threat is and wanting to do something about it. It's unique, and I can understand it in San Antonio because the population down there has so many military, retired, and even active duty in the area that they understand adverse conditions and being prepared for the unexpected. And so we've been working with them, and we want to expand that so that it goes statewide and recognize that we need to do this.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
and we've got to make Texas energy resilient, economically resilient, and I put forth with Representative Matt Krause a few times this idea of a Texas Fiscal Risk Commission. I hope you'll join with him in looking at that, because we're dependent here in Texas on the federal government in so many ways. And this is opportunity as the federal government comes under attack financially. It's an opportunity for Texas to kind of hold the line and stand up. Hold the line and stand up on energy. Hold the line and stand up for our power grid. Hold the line and stand up economically. So we're really proud of the terrific work that you're doing, Senator. It's just fabulous, and I hope you just keep it up. And we're behind you.
Well, thank you very much. We intend to do it, and I will say that if more of the power companies will do like CenterPoint did, which recognized that what we had to say had real merit to it and took it upon themselves they had a history of having already built a secure control facility. And so they sponsored Siemens to design and build a secure substations that are now available to be used in new installations or when they have to significantly replace an existing one. So there are some companies out there to begin to recognize it.
Let me ask on that. What's the cost differential? What does it cost different?
Very small, very small. And overall, the cost, what we would need to spend to develop protection for our grid system is far less than the money we have wasted on green energy. The billions and billions of taxpayer dollars that we wasted on the CREZ lines so that the wind power could be brought from West Texas into the metropolitan areas. For a fraction of that money, we could secure the Texas electrical grid for less than what the taxpayers are paying in subsidies to solar and to wind power on a continuing basis is more than enough to pay for this. We've got to be wiser, and we've got to recognize our role in government is to protect the people and to allow our electric power system to continue down this road of decay that it's on is irresponsible. And it is time that in 2021, it is time to quit kicking the electric grid security can down the road and secure it for the people of Texas.
No doubt. Senator Hall, this is your time. Thank you for all you're doing. God bless you.
Thank you, and God bless you guys.